lush, verdant heart of eastern Nigeria, where rolling hills met fertile valleys and ancient forests whispered secrets of bygone eras, lay the quaint village of Obiuku. This small settlement, though modest in size, pulsed with the vibrant energy of its close-knit community, their lives interwoven like the intricate patterns of their traditional fabrics. Obiuku was a tapestry of sights, sounds and smells that assaulted the senses in the most delightful way. Dirt paths snaked between mud brick houses with thatched roofs, their warm earthen tones a stark contrast to the riot of colors from the flowering plants that seemed to spring from every available patch of soil. The air was thick with the heady aroma of cooking fires, where pots bubbled with fragrant stews and soups, their enticing scents wafting through the village and making mouths water. In the center of Obiuku stood the village square, a hub of activity, where market days brought a cacophony of voices haggling over fresh produce, handcrafted goods, and the latest village gossip. The elders often gathered here under the sprawling branches of an ancient Iroko tree, its massive canopy providing shade as they deliberated on matters of importance to the community. It was in this vibrant setting that young Nwanneka's story unfolded. The last child of Mazi Akubueze and Obidia, Nwanneka was a bright-eyed girl with a smile that could light up even the darkest corners of the village. Her family's compound stood at the eastern edge of Obiuku, a collection of buildings arranged in a circular pattern around a central courtyard where much of their daily life took place. Mazi Akubueze, Nwanneka's father, was a respected member of the community. His tall, lean frame and weather-beaten hands spoke of years of hard work in the fields, cultivating yams and cassava to feed his family. His face, etched with the lines of both laughter and worry, often broke into a warm smile when his gaze fell upon his youngest child. Obidia, Nwanneka's mother, was a strong and nurturing presence in the household. Her ample figure moved with purpose as she managed the daily affairs of their home, her colorful wrapper swishing around her ankles as she went about her tasks. Nwanneka's 6 older siblings completed the family of 7. Each had their own unique personalities and roles within the household, but it was Nwanneka who seemed to hold a special place in everyone's heart. Perhaps it was her inquisitive nature, always asking questions and seeking to understand the world around her. Or maybe it was the way her laughter, like the tinkling of small bells, seemed to chase away worries and bring joy to those around her. As Nwanneka grew, it became clear that she was blessed with not only a sunny disposition, but also a sharp mind. In the village school, a simple structure with long wooden benches and a blackboard that had seen better days, Nwanneka shone like a bright star. Her hand was often the first to shoot up when the teacher asked a question, and her exercise books were filled with neat handwriting and correct answers. The other children in the village, rather than being jealous of Nwanneka's academic prowess, seemed to bask in her reflected glory. They would often gather around her during breaks, listening intently as she explained complex concepts in simple terms or shared stories she had read in her precious books. Her peers looked up to her not just because of her intelligence, but because of the kindness and patience she showed to everyone, regardless of their own abilities. One of Nwanneka's most ardent admirers was Mazi Njioku, a family friend who had known the girl since she was a babe in arms. Mazi Njioku was a man of contradictions, known for his generosity and kindness, particularly towards Nwanneka, but also for his quick temper and occasional forays into the mystical arts. His weathered face, framed by a salt and pepper beard, would light up whenever Nwanneka was around, his dark eyes twinkling with affection. Every school day, without fail, Mazi Njioku would prepare a special treat for Nwanneka. Sometimes, it was a carefully wrapped package of puff-puff the sweet fried dough balls that were a favorite among the village children. Other times, he would press a few coins into her small hand, urging her to buy herself something nice from the vendors who set up their wares near the school. These small acts of kindness further endeared him to Nwanneka and her family, cementing his place as an honorary member of their household. However, the idyllic life in Obiuku was not without its challenges and conflicts. Among these was the notorious Mama Ejike, a neighbor whose sharp tongue and argumentative nature had earned her a reputation as the village troublemaker. Her compound shared a boundary with Mazi Akubueze's, and hardly a day went by without the sound of her raised voice carrying across the village, engaged in yet another heated dispute. Mama Ejike was a formidable presence. Her ample frame, always adorned in brightly patterned wrappers and head ties that seemed to defy gravity. Her booming voice could be heard from one end of the village to the other, and her gesticulations were as dramatic as her words were cutting. Despite her abrasive nature, there was a certain vitality to Mama Ejike that made her an integral part of village life, for better or for worse. It was inevitable that Mama Ejike's path would cross with that of the short-tempered Mazi Njioku, and when it did, the resulting clash was spectacular. The arguments became the stuff of village legend, with insults flying back and forth like volleys in a tennis match. The other villagers would often gather at a safe distance, half amused and half concerned, as the two hurled increasingly creative invectives at each other. Little did anyone know that one such argument would set in motion a chain of events that would change young Nwanneka's life forever. As the sun set on another day in Obiuku, casting long shadows across the village and painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the stage was set for a confrontation that would have far-reaching consequences for all involved. The air was thick with tension as Mazi Njioku and Mama Ejike faced off in the narrow path between their compounds. Their voices rose and fell like the tide, each word laced with venom and years of pent-up frustration. Neighbors peered out from behind half-closed doors and shuttered windows, their curiosity piqued by the intensity of the argument. "You wicked old goat!" Mama Ejike's voice boomed, her hands on her hips, as she glared at Mazi Njioku. "Your evil eye has been on my family for too long. I see the way you look at my compound, wishing misfortune upon us." Mazi Njioku's face contorted with rage, his usually kind eyes now blazing with fury. "Me? Evil eye? You're the one who brings nothing but trouble to this village, you overgrown bush rat. Your mouth runs faster than a river in the rainy season, and is just as full of mud." The insults continued to fly, each more outrageous than the last. As the argument reached its crescendo, both Mazi Njioku and Mama Ejike uttered words that crossed the line, threats that went beyond mere insults and ventured into dangerous territory. "Mark my words, you meddlesome woman," Mazi Njioku hissed, his voice low and menacing. "If any harm comes to me or those I care about, you will wish you'd never set foot in Obiuku." Mama Ejike's laughter was harsh and mirthless. "Is that a threat, you toothless old dog? Be careful, or you might find yourself on the receiving end of powers you can't even imagine." As darkness fell and the two antagonists finally retreated to their respective compounds, an uneasy silence settled over the village. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, as if aware that a line had been crossed. Nothing would be the same again. Little did anyone know that these heated words, spoken in anger and frustration, would set into motion a series of events that would change the course of young Nwanneka's life forever. As the village settled in for the night, the seeds of tragedy had already been sown, waiting to sprout and bear their bitter fruit. In the days following the heated argument between Mazi Njioku and Mama Ejike, an unsettling atmosphere descended upon Obiuku. The village, once a haven of communal harmony, now felt charged with an invisible tension that seemed to crackle in the air like static electricity before a storm. Mazi Njioku, his pride wounded and his anger simmering, found himself unable to let go of the confrontation. The more he dwelled on Mama Ejike's words, the more his resentment grew, festering like an open wound. In his quieter moments, when the rational part of his mind tried to assert itself, he knew that escalating the conflict would only bring more trouble. But the whispers of wounded pride and the allure of revenge were far louder, drowning out the voice of reason. One moonless night, when the village was shrouded in darkness and most of its inhabitants were lost in slumber, Mazi Njioku slipped out of his compound. With furtive glances over his shoulder, he made his way through the winding paths of Obiuku, his destination clear in his mind, the dwelling of a powerful dibia who lived on the outskirts of the village. The dibia's hut stood apart from the others, surrounded by a tangle of vegetation that seemed to whisper and shift in the night air. Mazi Njioku hesitated at the threshold, his resolve wavering for a moment as he contemplated the gravity of what he was about to do. But the memory of Mama Ejike's taunting laughter stilled his nerves, and he pushed aside the beaded curtain that served as a door. Inside, the air was thick with the pungent aroma of herbs and incense. The dibia, an ancient man with skin like cracked leather and eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light of flickering oil lamps, sat cross-legged on a woven mat. Without looking up, he spoke in a voice that sounded like dry leaves rustling in the wind. "I have been expecting you, Mazi Njioku. The spirits whispered of your coming." Mazi Njioku, momentarily taken aback, quickly regained his composure. He explained his predicament, painting Mama Ejike as a menace to the entire village, a source of constant strife that needed to be dealt with. The dibia listened in silence, his gnarled fingers tracing patterns in the dirt floor. When Mazi Njioku finished speaking, the old man looked up, his milky eyes seeming to peer into the depths of Mazi Njioku's soul. "You seek a punishment for this woman, a way to silence her sharp tongue and curb her troublesome ways." Mazi Njioku nodded eagerly, leaning forward. "Yes, wise one. Something to teach her a lesson, to make her understand the consequences of her actions." The dibia reached for a small, intricately carved wooden box. Opening it, he removed a dark, powdery substance that seemed to absorb the lamplight around it. "This is Ashere," he explained, his voice low and ominous. "A powerful charm that causes the feet to swell when stepped upon. Spread it where your enemy will walk, and she will be afflicted with pain and swelling that no ordinary medicine can cure." Mazi Njioku's eyes gleamed with a mixture of fear and anticipation as he accepted the charm. The dibia's parting words, however, sent a chill down his spine. "Be warned, Mazi Njioku. The spirits of vengeance are fickle. The case you set for another may find an unintended victim. Are you prepared to accept the consequences, whatever they may be?" But Mazi Njioku, blinded by his desire for revenge, paid little heed to the warning. He left the dibia's hut with the Achiri charm clutched tightly in his hand, his mind already formulating plans on how to use it against Mama Ejike. Under the cover of early morning mist, Mazi Njioku crept to the path that led from Mama Ejike's compound to the village square. With trembling hands, he scattered the dark powder across the dusty ground, muttering a prayer to his ancestors for success in his venture. As the sun rose, burning away the mist, Mazi Njioku retreated to his own compound, his heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and guilt. That afternoon, as the sun reached its zenith and the village buzzed with the activities of daily life, young Nwanneka set out with her friends to fetch firewood for her mother. Their laughter echoed through the village as they made their way along the well-worn paths, baskets balanced on their heads, ready to be filled with dry branches and twigs. Nwanneka, ever the leader of the group, walked ahead, regaling her friends with a story she had learned in school. Her bare feet kicked up small clouds of dust as she walked, oblivious to the invisible danger that lay in her path. As she stepped onto the section of the road where Mazi Njioku had scattered their chere, there was no immediate indication that anything was amiss. It wasn't until later that evening, as Nwanneka and her friends were returning home, their baskets now heavy with firewood, that she began to feel a strange sensation in her feet. At first, it was just a mild itching, easily ignored in the excitement of their chatter and laughter. But with each step, the irritation grew, spreading up her legs and intensifying into a burning sensation that made her wince. By the time they reached her family's compound, Nwanneka was limping, her usually bright face contorted with discomfort. Her friends, noticing her distress, helped her carry the firewood the rest of the way, their jovial mood replaced by concern for their companion. Obidia, alerted by the unusual commotion, rushed out to meet them. Her motherly instincts immediately sensed that something was wrong with her youngest child. "Nwanneka, my dear, what is the matter?" she asked, her voice laced with worry as she took in her daughter's pained expression. "Mama, my body itches all over," Nwanneka replied, her voice quavering as she fought back tears. "And my feet, they burn as if I've stepped on hot coals." Obidia's brow furrowed with concern as she ushered Nwanneka into their home, calling for Mazi Akubueze as she did so. The other children were sent home with profuse thanks and assurances that Nwanneka would be fine after some rest. As night fell over Obiuku, the Akubueze household was a flurry of activity. Obidia prepared a warm bath infused with soothing herbs, hoping to ease Nwanneka's discomfort. Mazi Akubueze sat by his daughter's side, his strong hand gently stroking her forehead as he murmured words of comfort and encouragement. But despite their best efforts, Nwanneka's condition did not improve. The itching intensified, spreading across her body like wildfire. Her skin, usually smooth and unblemished, began to erupt in angry red welts that seemed to multiply by the hour. As the first rays of dawn broke over the village, Nwanneka's suffering had only increased. The welts had transformed into painful boils, covering her from head to toe. Her once melodious voice was now hoarse from hours of crying, her bright eyes dulled by pain and fatigue. News of Nwanneka's mysterious ailment spread through Obiuku like a bushfire in the dry season. Neighbors and friends flocked to the Akubueze compound, offering sympathy, advice and traditional remedies passed down through generations, but nothing seemed to help. Mazi Njioku, hearing of Nwanneka's condition, felt a cold dread settle in the pit of his stomach. Could it be possible that the charm meant for Mama Ejike had somehow affected the young girl instead? The dibia's warning echoed in his mind, mocking him with its prescience. Torn between guilt and fear of discovery, Mazi Njioku found himself unable to confess, even as he watched the suffering of the child he had always adored. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, Nwanneka's vibrant spirit began to dim. The girl who had once been the life of the village, always ready with a smile or a helping hand, was now confined to her bed, her body racked with pain and disfigured by the relentless progression of her mysterious illness. The village of Obiuku, once a place of joy and community, now seemed to be shrouded in a veil of sorrow. The laughter of children playing in the village square was muted, as if in respect for their suffering friend. Even the usually boisterous arguments of Mama Ejike seemed to have lost their fire, replaced by hushed whispers and worried glances towards the Akubueze compound. As all earthly remedies failed to bring relief to Nwanneka, the villagers began to whisper of otherworldly causes. Some spoke of angry ancestors, others of malevolent spirits. The sense of unease that had begun with the argument between Mazi Njioku and Mama Ejike now permeated every aspect of village life. In their desperation, Mazi Akubueze and Obidia decided to seek help beyond the physical realm. They would consult the great dibia, known for his ability to see beyond the veil of the visible world. As they prepared for this journey, they clung to the hope that finally they would find answers and, more importantly, a cure for their beloved daughter. Little did they know that their quest for answers would unravel a web of deceit, guilt, and unintended consequences that would shake the foundations of their close-knit community and test the bonds of love, friendship, and forgiveness in ways they could never have imagined. The journey to the great dibia's dwelling was a solemn affair. Mazi Akubueze and Obidia set out at dawn, their faces etched with worry and hope in equal measure. The path took them through dense forests and across babbling streams, each step taking them farther from the familiar confines of Obiuku and deeper into the realm of the unknown. As they walked, the couple remained mostly silent, each lost in their own thoughts and prayers. Obidia clutched a small pouch containing offerings for the dibia, kola nuts, alligator pepper, and a pristine white cloth. Mazi Akubueze's strong hand rested on her shoulder, a gesture of support and unity in the face of their shared ordeal. The dibia's abode stood in a small clearing, surrounded by ancient trees whose gnarled branches seemed to reach out like protective arms. The hut itself was larger than most in Obiuku, its walls adorned with strange symbols and fetishes that rattled gently in the breeze. A sense of otherworldliness permeated the air, making the hair on the back of their necks stand on end. As they approached, the beaded curtain at the entrance parted, and the dibia emerged. He was an imposing figure, tall and lean, with eyes that seemed to look through rather than at them. His body was adorned with white chalk markings, and he wore a necklace of cowrie shells that clinked softly as he moved. "I have been expecting you," the dibia said, his voice deep and resonant. "The spirits have shown me your plight. Come, let us consult the oracle." Inside the hut, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and incense. The dibia seated himself before a small wooden board, scattering cowrie shells across its surface. His eyes rolled back in his head as he began to chant in a language neither Mazi Akubueze nor Obidia understood. For what seemed like hours, the dibia communed with the spirits, his body swaying gently as he interpreted the patterns formed by the cowrie shells. Finally, he turned to the anxious parents, his eyes now clear and focused. "Your daughter Nwanneka has been caught in a web not meant for her," he began, his words measured and heavy with significance. "The spirits reveal that she has survived this long only because the poison was not intended for her. Had she been the target, she would have perished days after contracting the illness." Obidia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. Mazi Akubueze's brow furrowed deeply as he leaned forward. "Who is behind this, wise one?"